right, Jonboy. Well, I have hit the red light, so you can see it blinking at you. You're probably really nervous now, right?
No, no.
No, okay, all right. You're
This
you're a
is
pro at
this is
this.
a very informal conversation
Okay,
about
cool,
art and stuff. So,
awesome. Yeah. So why don't we start off with a quick sound check? Why don't you tell my listeners what you had for breakfast this morning?
actually, I am on intermittent fasting, so I don't do breakfast. I
Wow.
usually eat around 12:30 to 1 o'clock. But I did have a nice big cup of coffee. So,
Okay. So
so
fun fact for you: my podcast from like two of them
mhm.
ago, exact same answer. I'm in the middle
Yeah.
of the fasting thing. I had a cup of coffee, so apparently
Yep.
that's a hot trend right now.
Well, because I sit on my butt most of the day, so I try to be conscious of my caloric intake. So
Sure.
I got really kind of not crazy overweight, but for me, overweight, like just last year, just sitting and drawing all day and then eating, it's like, okay, I gotta kind of watch this because,
Yeah.
I'm not getting any younger and I gotta
Right.
take better care of myself. So,
It's
yeah,
it's the computer lifestyle that we're all just sitting in front of something, just
I know, right?
bent over a little bit. So
Yeah, nobody looks up anymore, which is kind of weird. I remember
I
looking
know.
at the sky, at the clouds as a kid. Now you're looking at clouds on your phone. You're like, oh, I'm missing out. So,
Exactly. Well, cool. I think we're sounding good here. Let's jump right into it. So, well, why don't you first tell my listeners who you are and what you're raising money for over on Kickstarter?
yeah, right on. My name is Jonboy Myers. I'm a concept and comic book artist, and I've been doing comic books primarily now for professionally a little over 20 years, maybe 25 if you count all my freelance free stuff that I did, like my indie stuff. But right now I'm raising funds on a Kickstarter to publish a sketchbook, and those any funds remaining from the sketchbook, I'm actually going to roll right into launching a creator-owned project. So something I've been working on off and on for the past 10 years. So
That's
it's
cool.
something I've always
So
wanted to do.
I'm in amateur land over here, so you got to talk to me like
Yeah.
that doesn't know much. So kind of walk maybe me and the listeners through the difference. Like, what is a sketchbook? What does that actually mean?
So sketchbook is actually kind of like pre-viz stuff, pre-visualization stuff. So like, let's say take the Marvel movies. Everything that goes into the ideas of drawing and sketching what Captain America's costume is going to look like for the film, what the environment's going to look like, what the backup characters are going to look like, stuff like that. So like I've worked on things like Spawn with Todd McFarlane, Teen Titans Rebirth just recently for DC, and of course Inhumans relaunch for Marvel. So all that 3D stuff for ships and buildings and character designs for like Robin and Starfire and Beast Boy and Medusa and all that stuff I put into my book. So
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
kind of the ideation process. So it's kind of like a lot of the concept stuff that leads up to a final product for people. So a lot of artists like myself, we always like kind of process stuff, like things that kind of didn't make the cut, or like the ideation phase of like how artists think or how artists work. That's usually the primary purpose of a sketchbook. It's kind of like, hey, this is how we got from point A, point B, point C. So
That's cool. And
yeah.
how many like pages is this? I mean,
Oh gosh, yeah. Sorry, this is going to be a 100-page sketchbook. It's going to be hardcover with a slipcase and everything. So the whole thing. So when we first launched it, I was just hoping like, okay, $5,000 is what I need to print a soft cover. I did some stretch goals. Like if we hit these stretch goals, like about $9,000, I can really produce a really nice, beautiful sketchbook for everybody, which is what I wanted to do. And I think within the first 19 minutes, we had crushed our stretch goal.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, it was really cool, man. It's like, okay, I guess I needed more stretch goals because I was like, I don't know what to do next. And like even my tiers, like I think that's something when you're running a Kickstarter, it's kind of a nice thing to have happen. But if you run out of stretch goals and hit all your tiers, you're like, have an idea of what to do next. Because I kind of lowballed everything because I just thought, well, if I just get enough for printing, I'll be happy. If I can make maybe another $5,000 to float into my creator-owned book, great. And now it's like around 33,000 right now. So I'm just like, okay, well, this is cool, but okay, like people are like, hey, open up more tiers. I'm like, okay, well, what?
What are they? I got to come up with that now.
Because
I mean, we've seen that. We've actually seen that sort of bite some people in the butt. They just don't do enough time and research, and they're they're all of a sudden they're like promising a whole merch store just to come up with some ideas or something, right? Like, oh yeah, we'll make like 45 new T-shirts, and it's like, whoa, this is getting
it's like because you don't want to overcommit yourself, because that's the thing is like you want to meet demand to make everyone happy. I think the thing about it is like, hey, look, the primary goal is to fund this to get a really tricked out sketchbook for everybody. The secondary goal was to fund my creator own. So I need to do stretch goals and tiers that are going to fall within my parameters of my budget. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
They're like, okay, well, now we're going to add this and add that, and I'm going to add this figure and all this stuff. And you're like, wait a minute, that's
Yeah.
like money going out the door too. It's like, hey, pump the brakes a little bit.
Right.
So I'm doing things like refrigerator magnets, vinyl stickers. I have a past sketchbook that I did a couple of years ago. I'm going to put it in PDF format. If we hit 45,000, I'm going to give that out free to everybody. Cool. And then I think if I hit 50,000, I want to do like a financial donation back to something called the Hero Initiative, which actually takes care of comic book artists as they age out. Like people have medical problems or hardships.
Sure.
Kind of a nice.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. So talk to me a little about what are you moving the funds into? Create Your Own is what you're calling it?
Yeah, it's called a Create Your Own thing. So most of my career, like 20 plus years, I've been doing like working on other people's IPs. IPs are intellectual properties. Like Batman is an IP, Avengers is an IP. So everything, all these character design and ideas and concept stuff, that they own that. So that's included as part of my page rate. So if the movies say, oh great, we're going to take Jonboy's design and make this into a movie, that's great. But guess what? We don't get anything out of that. We're like, hey, good job. Right. So I've been doing that long enough to where I'm like, you know what? I really would like to do something just for myself, for my own thing that I own that no one can take away. So that's called the Create Your Own project, which you can self-publish or you can Kickstarter yourself, or you can go through a publisher. And this is something I want to self-finance. So there's publishers out there, if people are familiar with publishing in comic books, there's a company called Image Comics that just distributes books. And that's where I'm hoping my book will end up. And it's called Princess Dragon Killer. So it's something that I've been working on for a long time. And it's kind of like my baby. I'm like, you know what? I want to put this out into the world. And this is just me, something that I own. I can call my own. So,
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Is there sort of a theme around the sketchbook at all? I mean, are you pulling from certain ideas or mindset? Like what's in it?
No, it's just mostly concept ideation stuff, cover roughs, scrapped cover ideas and things like that. Because I also do covers and interiors for like DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Valiant Comics, Boom Studios, Dynamite. It's all these like ideas because like usually when you're working on a brand or a product, you always have to submit thumbnails of like, hey, if you're doing a cover for that month, you'll usually send 3 or 4 cover ideas to the publisher. And usually the publisher usually picks the worst out of the 3 or 4. So you want to make sure you always submit something that you actually like to draw. But all that stuff that's on the cutting room floor, no one really gets to see. So that's the stuff that you always want to put into a book. It's kind of like, hey, this is what could have been. People are like, why did they go with that idea? It was so great. It's stuff like that. It's kind of like it's always like a behind the scenes thing.
Yeah.
It's always about the ideation and creative process that goes into it. And it's kind of interesting to see like past sketchbooks that I've seen from my friends is like, why didn't they do that idea? That would have been so much cooler. Or like, hey, but this is what happens when you work on corporate brands, because it's pretty much, does this fit within the ID for that brand or what editorial has in mind for it?
Sure.
So those kinds of lenses. So it's always kind of nice to share what could have been because it's just
right.
free stuff that no one else is ever going to see unless you share it with the world.
Right.
So,
No, that's cool. It's interesting that there's sort of I think you're going to be my second or third sketchbook interview that there is this sort of world around it, that you're describing right now that most people probably don't know. It's almost maybe even similar to like when the DVDs first come out and you get the Easter eggs and the extra cuts. I mean, I still think about for people that know me, I think Boogie Nights is an amazing movie, right?
Oh, great movie.
But the DVD that had all this extra footage might even be more funny. There's so many more funny scenes in that than.
Yeah, you kind of always wonder, like, the Zack Snyder cut of BVS, Batman versus Superman, is so much better than the regular movie. And you're like, why didn't they just do that? That would have been a better movie. It's always these decisions that get made by, like, either editorial or the studios to say, we cut this down or trim this. So it's kind of nice to have sketchbooks are very much a director's cut of what could have been or why these things didn't make it into the book or whatever, for whatever reason. It's always kind of like, man, it would have been a lot cooler. But again, it goes back to like, these things have to fall within a certain brand, a certain parameter. And that's great for guys like me because then we can always put it into a book and share it with everybody. So,
that's cool. So like, where'd you grow up and stuff?
I'm a military brat. So we kind of moved around quite a bit. My dad was military, settled in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And, I'm in Northern California now, but California is where I always wanted to be because that's kind of the creative mecca for like games and comics and entertainment. So this is kind of where I need to be in order kind of like live the life that I live.
Sure,
So,
of course. And
um,
like, and so, I mean, was like sketching and drawing kind of just always around you? Or like how did you get start getting into it and stuff?
yeah, actually, my dad was a military policeman, and he would always. So when soldiers get drunk on base, they arrest them, they put them in a drunk tank and let them dry out, and then they report them to the CO for insubordination. They got
Mhm.
drunk, they did this. But my dad, they would always go to the local shop and buy comic books, like at the local BX, which is like a 7-Eleven on
Okay.
base, and they would buy comic books for the GIs. So while they're kind of sobering up, they can read comic books and pass the time. So my dad would always bring these home. So he brought home all these war comics, and it was just like, and he would just let us read them and everything like that. And I was just like, oh my god, this is so cool. And one day my dad brought home a Captain America comic, and it just totally blew my mind. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. And then my dad would bring home like, markers from work and everything that he would borrow
Right.
from work and bring home for me to draw. So I started drawing and doing my own comic books and things like that. So that kind of got me started on my path of drawing, which was always nice. My dad is really instrumental in me becoming an artist, which is kind of weird because as I got older, he never thought art would be a real career. And my mom and dad were like, "You're gonna starve. This is a bad decision. You're so dumb." And I'm just like, "Oh." But now that they understand, I think geekdom and pop culture has kind of invaded like regular culture a little bit now. It's more prevalent. That I think the parents kind of have a better understanding of, oh, this is entertainment. This is something that's really accepted. You can make a living at doing this. Okay, I get it now. Because
Yeah.
growing up in Colorado is kind of like you're in the middle of the U.S. There's
Right.
really nothing going on. You have no idea what's going on. Whereas opposed to California and New York, these things are a little bit more accepted. People are like, oh, okay, this is actually a thing.
Is an
So
actual job. Hey,
yeah,
I'm outside of Detroit here, and
yeah,
I
right,
owned recording studios and wrote hundreds of songs and toured, and my parents just never got it. And eventually, once I had a family, you start pivoting and you go,
right, right,
all right,
right.
yeah, but they're just like they were more life choices than like this wasn't a job. It was a real thing. Like I made art,
Yeah, yeah,
create, you know.
yeah. I think we're all built a certain way, and I think the important thing is when you're going through life, you should always do things that make you happy, that gives you a lot more job satisfaction, and something that you can always do, even though it's work. Everything becomes work at some point, but things that you really enjoy, try to connect a career with a passion, because then you feel a lot more fulfilled. You're generally a lot more happier than going to a regular job and
Yeah,
punching a clock and just working for somebody. Just in my mind, it's hard for me to like, if people do that, not to judge, but I'm just saying for me, I have a hard time understanding, like, why would you do something you don't like?
I know.
You know?
You're
Find
preaching to the
something you
choir
like
here.
to do,
Yeah, yeah, I
Like,
get it, man. I'm doing a podcast with you on a what is it, Wednesday?
yeah,
Is it Wednesday? Yeah, because I want to learn and
right.
explore, connect. Who knows what it is? This is
That's
we
right.
have the technology. It's all it is. So yeah, it's exciting. So like as you're kind of growing up though, what starts to be some of the skill sets that you're seeing in yourself that you're like, I actually do have a talent for this. I'm not just sketching doodles. I'm actually there's some real talent here, and I want to push forward in it. What were you
You
starting to
know,
see?
I think it's when you start sharing your work with others, because I think there's one thing about working in a bubble, and you're only going to get so good at some point. But I think you reach a certain point where you really want to start growing as an artist and having new influences, looking at like not just comic books, but actually modern art, film and TV, music, getting inspired by all these different things, like the culture around you, and seeing what you can incorporate and take away from that and work that into your art. Because at some point, we all base our art off of somebody that we've liked at some point that made an impression on us. But after time, we kind of take a little piece of everything from everybody and kind of put this into a really great pot, and we're kind of cooking something new,
Hmm.
and that's what gets birthed, because we always stand on the shoulders of others who've come before us. That's why I think when you look at comic books now, they're a lot more detail oriented, more technical, more realistic in some cases. It's just because what's come before us, we've learned and we learn and we learn, and we get inspired by that, and we share with our art community, get feedback. I think feedback is probably one of the most important tools that you can get in any career in order to become better, because there is such thing as drinking your own Kool-Aid and having too much of it.
Yep.
I think it's better to be humble and talk to people, even on the internet. Of course, the internet is always going to have a million different opinions, and not all of those are the nicest. But the thing is, there's always a shred of truth in what everyone says. So you may get feedback and be highly negative, but in there might be a nugget or tidbit that says, you know what, Jonboy, I don't like the way he draws women's faces. And you see that throughout the thread, that people say the same thing. You're like, you know what? I can throw away this other stuff, but this is what I need to take away from that.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to hold on to. And that's what you need to work on in order to become a better artist. You know, it's all these things. It's just same with music too. Like you're like, hey, you know what, stop doing this, maybe try this, or stop listening to this guy because you know you're sounding too much like this person, like
Right.
try this instead. And I think even though some of that feedback again may be negative, try to filter that out. It's like panning for gold. You're like, you know, there's a nugget in here that's going to be worth it. And the thing is, you can't be so precious about your work and your opinions that, you know, everyone, if you ask for feedback, people are going to just blurt it out there. And the
Right.
thing about it is, try not to take it so personally. This is, detach yourself from it. This is just a tool for me in order to get better, and look at it like that.
Yeah, and I think everything you're talking about is a quite an invaluable skill set to have, because there's a ton of project creators or people that I've even worked with who can't accept what you're talking about because, you know, they have the, I made it, everybody's going to want this thing. And I think there's, you know, and it's funny because for me, coming from the music world, and everything you're saying, I agree with, right? Like you're only hearing, you know, the final version of a song after I have hours and hours and years of it, right? Where I was tweaking or I'm still probably not even that happy with it, but I was like, all right, I got to let it go. And for some people, if they're in like a prototyping phase or you know, they made this one thing, like they got their one prototype of it, it's the greatest thing ever. And it's just like, so I think that skill set you're talking about is very challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs to have. And I think it comes a little bit natural for artists. And I always try to kind of inject that into some of my corporate people who decided to do crowdfunding or to start to be their own company. They just can't think that loose about it to some degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a delicate, like it's like juggling balls a little bit. You have to understand like what is important to you in your product, but then what's important to your customers or the consumer who's going to be using it or interfacing with it or engaging with it, because you have to give your audience, you have to get feedback from them, especially if you're creating something, because like if I'm drawing something that people aren't resonating with, like, hey, look, you know, I need to change that. You know what I mean? It's just because look, at the end of the day, this is making a living. You have to make some compromises in the things that you're building, because like for me, when I was putting this book together, I reached out to a lot of my fans and people I knew, especially at shows, and they were saying, hey, you know, why don't you do a sketchbook? I haven't done a sketchbook in like almost 6 years. I'm like, well, okay, well, what would you like to see in it? And trying to pull from everyone, like, hey, what does everyone want to see? What can I give them that I have not given them already? You know, and trying to meet that expectation, because it's kind of like Star Wars, right? Like when we had the prequel movies back in the 90s and 2000, up until the movies that we have now, because there's been so much time that's lagged, as core fans, like the older fans, like myself and yourself, we had an idea of what these characters should be doing and what they are. And we've had so much time in between that we have a certain expectation built up. And the people who went on and made those newer films didn't care about our expectations or our ideas, which is a little bit disservice to fans, because you could have taken a consensus and said, you know, we have to give them something that they feel like, oh, yes, I got it right. Or because it's that investment. People are invested in your brand. So if you come up with a brand that's so alien to what people expect or wanted, people are going to be like, this doesn't feel right. I don't like this. They didn't listen to me. This is not my thing. It's like the Star Wars now. I look at it, it's like, it's not my Star Wars, man. It's not my Star Wars. But I understand that those movies now are not made for my generation. They're made for the next generation, which I totally get. But at the same time, they could have given us maybe 1 or 2%, you know, just a little bit, you know, because I was hoping for that Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie reunion, and that never happened.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to happen, right?
No, it's not going to happen now.
Not going to happen. Yeah. That's cool. So, I mean, when you start getting this idea that, all right, I'm going to put a sketchbook together, or you've gotten enough feedback, what for you is your first steps out of the gate? What do you start to assemble? Where does your mind go to get to right now?
I think for me it's about printing. Like for me, I'm always about quality. I want to make sure that when people get a product in their hands, because the sketchbook is $30 and it's a hardcover with a slipcase, and you know it's a nice looking book. But I want to make sure when they get something that, one, the materials they have are quality, that they feel like they're getting their money's worth for sure, that they're getting something that's high value to them. So I did a lot of research as far as printing and the types of things I could do with printing and what can I do with it. I really researched past sketchbooks that I've gotten that I wish were better. And then I would reach out to international printers and talk to them about, that was probably about a 3-month process about talking to people, getting print quotes, crunching numbers, figuring things out like, well, if I did this or I did that, or if I graded the paper, hey, if I did UV spot on this or round in the corners, like how much is that going to cost me? And try to work all those things into like, okay, this is what I need to raise, because you have to come up with a realistic number. Like, this is what I need to raise or crowdfund or kickstart in order to make this project happen. And the thing about it was, I always did what's called the rule of thirds. So I think it's always important to ask for 1/3 of what it's going to cost, because I know that if I printed up 1,000 sketchbooks, I know realistically 1/3 of that, I'm probably actually going to sell 300. But in order to get a good price break on it to offer to everybody, I need to offer it at this price. I need to order this many. This is what it needs to be, because then I'll have a backstock that I can sell at shows or do whatever.
Right.
But these are these things you have to keep in mind, because if you ask exactly what you need for printing, you know what, it's like, ask for probably what you need is probably like maybe a quarter, or maybe a third or a half. I think is a lot smarter, because you're not going to sell that entire stock out. You need stuff for your store and things like that. You'll still make money with the Kickstarter, but the thing about it is you want to create traction, and you want to create a buzz and a sense of excitement that you're hitting your goals, that things are realistic. Because I think when you tell people, hey, I need to just raise $5,000 versus I need $15,000, that's like, dude, that you can't expect people to always shoulder that. You know what I mean? Because I'm making a book too, so you have to be realistic. Like, hey, most sketchbooks, like, I think 5,000 is realistic. Printing's going to cost me maybe 11,000, so I'm asking for half of that, because the rest of it I know I can sell later on. You got to play the long game with the things that you're building too. It's not like, okay, I'm going to sell out of everything. You want to have a backstock for yourself. So.
Well, I think you just hit on it right there. That's been sort of our newest theme around here as an agency is thinking about the long tail on the entire process. Obviously, if you just put everything and how much you're spending strictly into one Kickstarter, I know you need $100,000 minimum, like that. And I know you need to hire marketing departments, and
right.
I get all that. That obviously, I want you to scale 3 years from now. This is just the Kickstarter, right? Or
right.
Or so people are like, why am I going to run this many Facebook ads? Not everybody's going to buy it. It's like, yeah, but they don't go away, so maybe they don't buy the Kickstarter, but they buy it on your store later, or they engage with you forever. It doesn't just stop,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Like beyond the product, like the idea is implanting a seed in someone's mind. And the thing is, you want to create those opportunities for engagement. So if it's Facebook ads or Twitter ads, or whatever you decide to do to market and push out your book or push out your product, you want to keep in mind, like, hey, look, just because people aren't going to buy now, you know what, they're going to remember, hey, Jonboy Myers did this. Oh, he's doing another project. Like, oh, you know what, maybe I will buy this time. I really like what he did, even though I didn't back at that time, I'm going to back at this time. You want to create these opportunities for engagement, because you're creating familiarity with people. Yep. You know what I mean? Like the fact is that you put out one Kickstarter, if you do another one, people are like, oh, well, this guy's a real deal. He's not going to just take my money and run.
Yep. All that's important. It's about just constantly, and it's hard, but you got to be on people's minds. I'm just like, you just got to be there,
Yeah. Like right now I'm kind of in that mid lull, like we're on like day 15 now, like a 31-day, Kickstarter. So I'm like, it's kind of evened out a little bit, and I know things are going to ramp up towards the end. So I'm trying to create opportunities for engagement. So what I'm doing is I'm doing free sketch giveaways for my backers and new backers. So I've done 2 weeks worth of free sketch giveaways to try to create engagement. So that's helped bump up a little bit. But the thing about it is you want to create those opportunities where if people missed out on one product, that you're still offering an opportunity for people to still get a free sketch or things like that. You missed out. And it's a great way to engage with your fans a little bit, because you're offering something to them that they can't ordinarily get. And people see the effort that you're putting in, or at least I hope so.
Yeah.
Into what you're doing. It requires a time and investment on your behalf. But the thing about it is, you can't look at it as, well, just because I don't get the sales does not mean I'm not going to get the engagement, because I also linked these back to, like, I did one on Instagram and I did one on Twitter, and the next one I'll do is on my Facebook page. But these things actually grew my social media channels too. So that is potential customers later on down the road. You know what I mean? You have to understand, just because you're not selling a product doesn't mean you're not getting reach. And you have to be able to be okay with that. Like, hey, look, you have to, again, it's about the long game. Like, you're in it for the long run. You're creating a brand, you're shipping product. You have to think about like, okay, not 1 year from now, not 2 years from now, not even a month from now, like maybe 5 years down the road,
Yeah.
like this is where I want to be. You have to lay that good foundation, because if you don't, like you're just putting out these small little projects that never get back because people don't know who you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're spot on with all that. I think that's all great information. So for you, I mean, it sounds like you're sort of a bit of a one-man show right now, right? You don't have a big team working on anything, right?
No, it's just my wife and myself. So we're like, hey, we're just do it yourself DIY. I've been approached by a lot of people. You know how it is when you're running a Kickstarter. All these people come out of the woodwork, like, hey,
yeah.
The only thing that I don't like is if you're gonna ask to do fulfillment service with me, at the very least is you could back the Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's bare
If
minimum.
you're not even serious about my product or care, you just want to make money off me, you don't want to invest. It's like the very minimum. It's like, look, at least back the Kickstarter. So for me, that tells me that it's like, okay, these guys are just in it for the financial gain.
Yep.
But I mean, I have not yet found a fulfillment service yet. But I think honestly, like I think it's something that I kind of want to do myself anyway, because I think when you put in the time to run a Kickstarter and then you go through the entire process, I think you need to experience that full process for yourself. So when you do it again, you can make better, smarter, more informed decisions. It's like, you know what? I need to do better boxes. I need to actually get a printing label machine, or I need a better tape machine. You need to go through all these. It's kind of like the pain of growing your business a little bit to understand this is how it is day one at its worst. So what can I do to make that process a lot better? So you kind of have to go through that pain a little bit to understand like, okay, wow, that took like an entire month of my life.
Right.
Dear God, please save me. But it helps you make better informed decisions later. So you have to look at every opportunity as a way to grow and scale your business, because you will problem solve during that process and say, you know what, I ordered way too many boxes. I ordered the wrong kind of tape.
Mm-hmm.
I should have shipped with them instead of this.
Right.
There was a reason why I made my sketchbook 7.5 by 10. It's because I can ship it smaller, medium mail. You know what I mean? And the weight's still about a pound. Anything like past, I think like 2 or 3 pounds, it's not medium mail anymore. So that affects the price. There's all these little micro decisions that you make when you're creating your product. Like, how is that going to ship? How is that going to hold up? Is international shipping going to kill me? Like, it's all these things. And I think the thing that I'm struggling with right now is like, I got approached by a thing called Backer Club. And I'm kind of on the fence, like, should I try this or not? And like, what is your takeaway, Jeff? Like, what do you think? Is it worth it? Not worth it? Like,
so we tend to stay away from that stuff. And our sort of rules around it and our mindset is, and again, not right or wrong. By all means, I'm sure
I'm just asking. Of course,
they've got a success story out there.
We should ask them, because people want to know. Like, is this something that's viable?
I mean, so our mindset on it is, I'm probably a part of Backer Club. I've backed a gazillion campaigns. I'm sure they have my data somewhere, and I bet I get a message. But I still go back to, I don't know who you are. It would be like driving by a billboard and next. So it goes back down to, I need 3 to, 10 encounters with you. I need to see you on Twitter, Facebook. I need to hear you. I need whatever it is. Then I make a decision. So just seeing something once or twice, you would just be like, it'd just be white noise in my And that's how I approach, and I use this analogy for a lot of people where I'm like, again, just think about the last time you were driving down the highway, you saw a billboard for some, a camera store, and you instantly got off you went and found it, and you spent $600 on a camera, in a blink of an eye. I guarantee you've never done that. You might have bought some fast food, or something, but like you've never made that decision. But that's ultimately, I think, what you're asking people to do in that sort of like blind strategy of just like, how many people, because you want people that like comic books, want sketchbooks, have backed those things before, and the data is not segmented to that degree. It's just a blind shotgun, and I just don't think those work. So.
Yeah, like I'm kind of debating. I've had friends who tried Backer Club, and they said it just broke even for them. So what they put into is what they got back out, and they're like, I don't know if I'd do it again. So I think for me, it's like, well, have I, with everything that I've been doing so far, have I saturated the market already for the people who collect comics and collect sketchbooks? Have I done that already? Have I created enough visibility for that? How do I get somebody else who's not too familiar with it to engage with it? And I think that's the thing that I'm kind of like beating my head against the wall against. It's like, well, how do I reach just like the regular everyday dude who might not necessarily be, in my feed or anything like that? How can I get them to engage with it and like participate in it or be excited about it? And I think that's something I'm still kind of like trying to figure out
See,
right now.
see, and I think those questions that you're asking, I would advise and say that those aren't. You can't answer those questions inside of a Kickstarter window. The Kickstarter is for true insiders, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
it's for guys in your newsfeed. What you're describing is how do you get to a guy like it's me. I'm into crowdfunding.
Right.
I've got young kids, right? I've got a 7-year-old boy. I've got Captain America stuff everywhere, Superman, like right. And I would make that purchase after I read something on Medium about you. I read something on a blog. You ran a Facebook ad, and we're talking about this might be 2 years from now for you, or a year from now for you. And
Right.
it's just that general, you know, you just are always there. I see. Oh, I'm listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast, and all of a sudden you're on, and I'm like, man, I saw that guy's ad a couple.
It's like, I remember that guy.
I know that guy.
Yeah.
2 years
Yeah.
ago, I saw that guy.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately the questions you're asking aren't solved actually in a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I got
That's
you.
the hard,
Yeah.
that's the long tail that I tell people. I'm like, man, where you are in a comic book, you're doing really well in a comic book land, right? Like when you start going on the data of just where you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And probably too, this campaign, what you're at 30, where are you?
33 something.
33. So you're probably tapping out at 45-ish, maybe 47 when it's all said and done.
Fingers crossed. I hope so.
Because you should have a big swell at the end. And then obviously you're on my podcast, and anybody on my podcast, that equals at least 20 grand. So.
Oh yeah, that's of
yeah,
course.
Yeah. This is a 20 grand interview. But so you look at it and you're like, man, that's awesome. And then what we typically do, and I would advise this as well, is man, get a pre-order up ASAP after the campaign, because you don't know how many people just go, I don't buy on Kickstarter. I got burned once. I just don't do it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, where should I put that? Should I do that like after Kickstarter? Just put it on the store page or something like that?
So we typically do it like literally like the day after the Kickstarter. We use a tool called Celery or whatever, or you can use an ecom, whatever. I mean, it's basically and I just build a long form sales page that looks like my Kickstarter. And then I link my Kickstarter page to that store. So that you're getting some referral traffic. So if maybe somebody just missed it and they just like, oh man, I missed it. And I basically offer the same pricing, Kickstarter pricing. And I say, here's the reward. And I still run my traffic into that. And basically what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to keep orders coming. So basically when you go back to your numbers conversation, ordering 1,000 is much better than ordering 200, right?
Right.
So if you can get, 300, 400 orders here, you're going to sell some of your stuff, but man, maybe you get another like 50 orders just up until the time that you ship,
Oh yeah. I think that's a great thing. That's a good idea. That's something that's food for thought. I'll have to talk to my wife about that. Like, hey, so now we need to start thinking about doing this now. Cause I was like, I was just going to put it on my web store, but I'm like, well, should I just, cause I think you can still, like on some Kickstarters, once it's end, you can still order the product. So,
well, some people move it over to like Indiegogo in demand, but that's we refer to that here internally. Again, no offense to Indiegogo, I run campaigns on that platform, but it's kind of turned into like the graveyard of successful Kickstarters. It's just there's no free traffic. You still got to spend money. That you might as well move that people over to your brand, your website, your store, whatever it is.
I've been burned on Indiegogo too much, so I don't I'm still waiting for stuff that like hasn't shipped in like 3 years, and
you'll never get it. Yeah, and that's the problem with Indiegogo. It's why we very rarely advise clients to go over there.
Yeah, you gotta have accountability built in with it. It's like, hey, look, man, like you need to do this for people. Like for me, it's just like that's the worst thing is to leave, because this is your brand, your name, and everything. You're putting it out. Like I think you have a responsibility to make sure you ship what you say you're going to ship. Of course, you ship it within a reasonable time. And it's like, hey, look, like this is you going forward. Like it's kind of like, why do this and shoot yourself in the foot? Like why?
Right? Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get a lot of stuff that people do when it comes to this world, and I think it's just everybody's trying to make the best decisions, but at some point you just got to Google some of the best practices and just do some of these things. But so that's it. Well, I mean, so like you've got how many days to go here? We're talking. I think you had 15 days to go.
I think 15 days or 14 days, something like that.
So yeah, when this goes out, you'll probably be in that last week or so. So like, what happens? After the money gets in the bank accounts. What starts your process? How do you start to fulfill these rewards?
Well, I've got it staggered already. So by the time, like probably around the last week when my Kickstarter is about to end, I'm going to have an exact number for print numbers. So I'm actually going to start getting those books printed. And my goal is to print probably about maybe 3 times as much. That way I get a good price break on it. And then as soon as those books come in, I'm going to start doing, like, people have tiers, sketches and things like that, start autographing books, start doing as much pre stuff as I can, because I've already bought my boxes already. I have a good idea of what I'm going to sell. So I'm going to start pre-packing a lot of that stuff. So when those things are ready to go, once the money clears, I can start printing that stuff out, putting those boxes together, because you want, time is probably your most precious asset. And if you squander that time, then that means it's more crunch time for you at the end. So I'm going to try to do as much pre-workout stuff as I can to get it all kind of primed and ready to go. So books are already all signed, things like that. Because like I should be getting books the way I've planned. I should be getting books probably within the 3rd week after the Kickstarter ends, which is pretty fast for printing out of China. So so when I get those things in, I can start autographing all of them. And then the ones that have sketches, that pay for sketches, I'll start doing sketches in those. And then once the money clears, it's like, hey, cool, yay. I'll start shipping those out, which I guess is 30 days, right? I have friends who are like, come on, 30 days.
That's great. That's great. Now, for you, has there been any sort of anything sort of really weird behind the scenes that has kind of shocked you a little bit? Like, oh man, we've got a big following in New Zealand. I don't know, anything weird like that?
No, I've been tracking. I did a Google ID on it, so I can track all the metrics on it. I think the thing that I find is weird is like people will back and then cancel right away, which is a little strange. I'm just like, what is that about? Because like you're always kind of wondering like, hey, look, why did you decide to cancel? Like I think for me, I always want to know like, is you feel like shipping's too high, or what's the deal on this? Like, because like I'll have people who will like bid a lot of stuff, but then later on let it go, but then it gets snatched up right away. But you still want to understand like, hey, is this more of a product end thing, or is this more of a personal end thing? Like you wanted it and then you decide, oh, I'll just wait later or whatever. I think because not knowing, because you always want to understand what's in the mind of your customers. And if this is a trend, like, oh, if they're doing this and then dropping it off again, you're kind of like, oh, we're up, now we're down. Like, what the heck happened? It's like, stop playing with emotions.
I can give you some insight in that. That's a Kickstarter scam that I think is Kickstarter is working to weed out. So there's a few agencies out there that will literally, they've created like 10 to 20 fake Kickstarter accounts, and then they'll come in and back and then tell you like, oh my gosh, look at you hired us and instantly we got you 15 backers.
Oh. Yeah, so I did back it. I haven't gone with any backing services.
Yeah. Well, then what a lot of people do is then they'll pay because they're like, oh my gosh, we got 15 backers in day one. This guy did it. And then all those backers disappear. And they do it slowly over time so that you don't catch wind of like, because it's not like you get 15, then 15 go away. So they'll just every day, like you lose one. And then by the end of the campaign, you realize I didn't get any new backers from that service. But then their scenario is, and I can see what they're trying to do is, and we've experienced this by working on a campaign that somebody hired somebody outside of us, well, you do show up higher in the search feeds now. So if ideally you want to have like 3 to 5 backers a day. If you're doing that, you are hitting, like in this middle lull, 3 to 5 backers a day is like gold, right?
Okay, cool.
So, but if you're getting like this big spike all of a sudden, you pop right back up in the, because your bounce rate changes. So Kickstarter rewards you by putting you back up in the top 10. So that's what these agencies are selling you, but ultimately you're not getting any new backers when it's all said and done. When everything shakes out, when you pan that gold at the end, there's nothing left.
You're just paying for product placement on the front page, basically.
Exactly. That's what it is. So, maybe there's an argument there of like, all right, well, I'm on the front page of Kickstarter's, art book. But that's also like a 2012 mindset, right? So like, again, if I had campaigns in 2009, 2010, front page was golden. Just like being in the newsletter was golden. Being Projects We Love was golden. And all that stuff for Kickstarter's turned into like, we get Projects We Love and nothing happens. We got a newsletter for a project not too long ago, which was like, man, if I had a newsletter, that's like 50 backers. And we got 4 backers out of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder why now, why it's changed. Like,
well, the platforms have changed. I mean, what's truly happened, and I think, Kickstarter will never admit some of this stuff because their platform's struggling, I think, a little bit because of social media, because it lives and dies on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Once you have to start paying for these, you got to pay to play, basically. There's no organic traffic. Well, now how are people getting to this Kickstarter? And then the Kickstarter world itself has gotten so saturated, and it's almost like a as seen on TV type of vibe, like I mean, how many weird widget things can there possibly be from sleeping pillows and headphones?
Right.
I mean, how
Right.
many in-ear headphones can possibly be sold right now? You know, so you're just seeing this like oversaturation. You're seeing social media change, and now you're seeing like, you know, why? If I mean, I've probably backed 50 projects. I don't even. It's some gigantic number, but I still gotta like want the thing. I don't just
Right. Oh yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know. So I think, and I you know, I think the platforms have basically matured to where they're doing probably what they really are. You have the right mindset, but it weeds out a ton of people who are like, I'm just going to make my 50 grand a day, launch a page and go. You know,
It doesn't work like
it
that.
doesn't
Like
work
you
like
really,
that.
it's like a second job. Like I've been noticing at the first week of my Kickstarter, I was doing 4 to 5 hours a day.
Mhm.
Like the first week, just making sure, answering questions, talking to people, posting, and now it's down now to about maybe 2 or 3 hours a day, which
Yeah.
is a little more manageable for me because I have a ton of work on my plate. I'm
Right.
like, I got to get this. I got to pay bills too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think towards the end of it, I'm going to have to really ramp up again with the Twitter ads, Facebook ads, things like that, Instagram, and just start hitting it again. And it's always about visibility and reminding people like, hey, look, like this is ending soon, please back, you know, and doing that. Of course, podcast interviews and getting the
Yeah.
message out too is also a great way to do it. I think,
Mhm.
again, I think people just need to look at like, you have to get the word out, and engagement's the most important thing because like you said, I think you may not be getting a buyer today, but you might be sowing those seeds for a buyer maybe a year from now or
Yeah,
2
you
years.
never know. You know, the worst thing is to be quiet. Like that's like every project that I've ever worked on that failed had a project creator who decided that he didn't want to talk about it. I think I'm annoying people. I think people have seen, and it's just like the world is gigantic. Nobody is. I posted twice yesterday to Twitter. Huh? Like there's, you know, we call them farts in the wind. They're nothing. No, you know,
Right.
what? Nobody saw it. Who saw it? No, they're
Oh,
people are getting. They've heard me too much, and I'm like, you haven't even scratched the surface of what you need to be doing. So
Yeah, I think there's a way to be pleasantly persistent about it. I think doing updates with your main backers to let you know that you are engaged, this product is happening, creates confidence.
yeah,
Especially if they have questions. I think the main thing is anybody who leaves a comment, I want to make sure I comment back to make sure
yeah,
that you want to make sure people are being heard. They have questions that you are giving good answers, or like, hey, why aren't you doing this? Like, well, hey, you know, I can't do more sketch tiers because then at some point I'm never going to get to work on my creator own because I'm doing sketches for the
right,
Kickstarter. There's like
yeah,
I like 10 is it or 20 is it, you know, and people kind of understand that once you explain it. But I think yeah, you can't go silent. I think you have to be vocal about what you're doing. You have to talk to people and engage.
and
It's
believe. Well, I call it believe in it. You got to believe
yeah,
in it.
oh yeah,
Like
oh yeah.
if you believe in it, I believe in crowdfunding. Hence me doing podcast episodes and blog.
Hey,
I
yeah,
believe
of
in it.
course. Yeah.
I believe in it. I don't do anything, but I like this thing. I want to make money off of it. You know.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest thing for me is researching it. Like I found a really great book, online book by Greg Pak, who's a comic book author who put out a book on Kickstartering comics and stuff like that, which was incredibly helpful. But trying to weed out like podcasts and what to watch, what not to watch, like this, like your podcast is a great tool because it talks about everybody, about what they did, what was successful, what wasn't. I wish I had this tool. I wish I found you sooner, but we could have connected sooner before I did all this because I probably would have done things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I think that things like this are out there. Like I get, you know, the next Kickstarter I do, I think I'm going to be a lot more, you know, on point about like, okay, this is what worked for me last time. This is what didn't. This is what I need to do. Um,
Yeah, and
and
you're in the right mindset. You said it's growth. You know
yeah, it
you're
is.
never going to know
Yeah,
everything, so it's all growth. It's great.
yeah.
So yeah, a couple more questions and we'll wrap up here. I'll let you get back to drawing. You know.
Okay, right on. Yeah, let's do it.
Uh, so one, what's happening? Where do you see yourself maybe in the next 2 years? Do you see more sketchbooks? Do you see working on the other project you're talking about? Where do you kind of see you going towards?
Ideally, I like to be able to do my own project, my own creator own, put it out on the direct market, which would be like through bookshops, comic shops, bookstores, things like that. Like I do single issues, then and collect those into trades that go into bookstores and things like that. I would still like to do Kickstarters though. I think it would be really nice to do a special edition like for Princess Dragon Killer, my creator own project. Once the first trade is out on that, it'd be really nice to do it. Really nice tricked out oversized hardcover art book of all the ideations, all the stuff, like kind of what I'm doing now,
Yep.
but just for that one property, put it all in one book and offer it on Kickstarter. That way it's more of a thank you. Like, you can't get this anywhere else. You can only get it on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really great way to reward the fans. And I think I'd like to do is actually everyone who backed this initial Kickstarter, I'd like to probably put their names in the back of that book, say, hey, look, it's because you guys, this is because of you guys, and just list all their names and say thank you. I think that's a good way to always reconnect with your fan base, because the things that kind of help make you successful, you should try to continue in some fashion on doing it later on down the road. Because the book that I'm doing right now is called Volume 2. And I did a Volume 1 like 5 years ago that I didn't Kickstarter. I just printed and sold at shows. But now people are asking for, like, well, where do I get Volume 1? So I'm like, well, maybe I need to do a reprint and supersize that and reissue that, call it like Volume 1 Reloaded, and offer that to people to where they could back it and do that as well. Because now that there's enough people asking for it, I'm like, you know what, there's another product that I have that like people will want. So I was like, okay, well, maybe a couple months after this Kickstarter ends, maybe towards the summer, I'll relaunch again for like maybe the winter.
Yeah.
Or like maybe early fall, early to mid fall, have that released. Or I do Volume 1 Reloaded and offer that for people who missed out on Volume 1 way back when.
Right.
Which is a really good thing, because feedback, because if you listen to people, they'll tell you what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't hit it right on this one, the next one is like, okay, well, this is what I need to do on the next one. Yeah. Which you hope is like, okay, well, all those people all won, I hope you better back it. So
yeah, well, you definitely, I mean, you have the right mindset. I mean, this is one, you have the right mindset. Two is the timing's good. I mean, there's a resurgence right now on Kickstarter for comics, sketchbooks, documentaries, board games. Obviously, board games are just through the roof. And I think what you're seeing here is that's what I was talking about earlier. This is this sort of, I've seen enough in-ear monitors or widgets, right? I've seen enough of that stuff, and you're starting to see board games and comics and this sort of the art, which is really, again, this is how Kickstarter started. Remember, it started by two guys from Burning Man who wanted to fund music projects, and so it's getting back to its roots a little bit. While still having the headphones that make $1 million, and you're like, okay,
of course, right?
They'll always exist, but this is sort of actually at the core and at the root. So I think you're good stuff there too. So where can people dive in, and how can people find out more information on you, the product, the Kickstarter?
I always hate saying this, but like, you can Google me, Jonboy Myers. I'm all over the web. Jonboy007 on Twitter, and Jonboy007 on Instagram. Jonboy Myers on Facebook, and Art of Jonboy Myers is my second Facebook page, and of course www.jonboymyers.com. You can find me on Kickstarter. All you have to do is click on Kickstarter and publishing, you'll find me, or you can type my name there, Jonboy Myers, and you'll find me. And I'm always appreciative of new backers, but even if you guys can't back, always appreciate the support, where you guys could just tweet and share with your friends too on your social media is a great way to support too. And I really appreciate you having me on the show. This has been, awesome. Honestly, dude, this has been really great talking to you. We need to do this again.
Yes. I love doing them. Maybe, we should definitely do a follow-up. I always love kind of checking in on projects.
Yeah, let's do that.
Where are you guys right now? So that'd be great.
Yeah, like anytime, just let me know. As soon as the Kickstarter ends, we can sit and talk about it. You're like, hey, how's boxing up all those books? I'm just,
how's
like stacks of books over here.
Yep. Make sure you take pictures of those for backer updates, man. People love that stuff.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I can't wait. Like, hey, here's all the stacks of pylons. Like, I'm wondering, like, do I have enough room in my garage for all that? Because like, my wife's like, where are you gonna do all this stuff? I'm like, the living room. She goes, no.
You don't want to. She doesn't want to make a big shipping station in the living room. What's the matter with her?
Well, it might be in my studio. I might have to stop drawing for like maybe 2 or 3 weeks just to ship everything, because I think that's probably gonna be my life for a while.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. You'll be at the post office and DHL if you're doing international. That's your life, right?
You think DHL is a better way to ship internationally than USPS?
I don't know anymore, man. It depends on the numbers. I just go crunch the numbers. I don't know. We just use DHL for like a bass guitar product thing. And I don't know. That's just the numbers came in better there. But
right. So
I don't know. It's like
it's all these things that always come in flux, because I've been researching international shipping orders, and when you're trying to figure out what's the average median cost for people to ship, because you don't want it to be greater than the cost of the book.
Right.
But
you don't want them to pay a tariff either, because we just dealt with that. Yeah.
It's tough, man.
It's tough, man. I know. It's a tough one. Shipping, and I've seen shipping literally kill a project where they didn't calculate enough, and they told me they did. And then we get down to what they raised, and you start doing the numbers, and you're like, you need another like $4,000 to ship everything.
Well, rates change all the time too.
Right.
So,
Well, and that's why we try to always put our projects in a calendar year, so that we don't do our math for 2019 and we skip 2020 and everything went up 50 cents, and 50 cents to 2,000 backers.
Yeah, like most of my stuff, since it's a book, is through Media Mail. But even Media Mail rates went up, so I made sure, like, hey, you gotta do the research again. But things change all the time too, and I kept thinking like, oh, DHL for international. Why didn't I think of that? So. Again, another great idea. Thank you very much.
No problem. All right, Jonboy, I appreciate you taking time out of your day, man. You got a great project here, great Kickstarter, and I look forward to talking in the future here and reconnecting.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.